Shivers High. I'm back with the 25 books 2025. I call this one in Great Yarmouth, and it's by Valerie Martin. It's called Property. And one thing I loved about this book, it is so honest and how god awful these people are. Anyway, it's about slavery, okay, and here we are. Manon Gaudet is unhappily married to the owner of a Louisiana sugar plantation. She misses her family and longs for her native New Orleans, but most of all she longs to be free of the suffocating domestic situation. Attention revolves around Sarah, a slave girl given to Manon as a wedding present, whose young son Walter is living proof of where Manon's husband's inclinations lie. This private drama is played out against a brooding atmosphere of unrest and brooding, so bloody uprisings, as the whispers of the slave rebellion grow louder and more threatening. And interesting too, because this is written from the point of view of a slave owner. Yes, this book is bold and it's daring and it's unashamed, and I enjoyed it because it showed how god awful this time period was in American history. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right, here we are. This is when Manon's talking about her husband. Manon, interesting name, unusual. I never read that in fiction before. He has his stick there by the tree. It is never far from him. The boys fall silent as he takes it up. Sometimes the offending boy cries out or tries to run away, but he is no match for this grown man with his stick. The servants' tumultuous subsides as quickly as the master rises, and the latter will last until he gets to the quarter. If he can find the boy's mother and she's pretty, she'll pay for it dearly with a rude and unnatural child. What Manon's husband does is basically encourage these young boys to jump into the water, and for them who, you know, cold water hits the body, okay, what can happen? They will get beaten for it. They will get beaten for it because a husband is a slave owner and is so unapologetically awful, and is also has a child, Walter, who's incidentally hearing impaired, with his slave Sarah. Yes, who was Manon's gift, by the way, gift for her wedding, because Manon's aunt, her husband lusted over Sarah, so she was a wedding gift. The fact is that Sarah is a wedding gift. And the way she treats Sarah, okay, is absolutely god awful. And with Manon, okay, she's so bored and has nothing to do all day, besides being, okay, a slave owner's wife, okay, is that she sews. She shows nothing. She sits there sewing nothing. Right, just sewing. Here we go. Right. It was so hot I had a fan me, so there we sat with my internal sewing, Sarah plying the fan and the baby sleeping in her box. She has rigged the box out absurdly with a ticking mattress stuffed with moss and covered by a rag quilt. Right. Stephen tacked a loop of willow across the middle to hold a piece of mosquito net. Is she a princess? I said when I saw the ridiculous contraption. Is she not? If she's not itchy, she won't cry, Sarah replied. This, I had to admit, was a visible assertion. Is one of the annoying things about her. On the occasions when she bothers to speak, she makes sense. She just hates Sarah. Sarah's now had her husband's second child, okay? Right. Who's won't really be acknowledged, okay, because the child is darker. So there's a kind of a question mark, who is the baby's father kind of thing. Right. And it's bit here. Does Sarah think about what would become of her if he were gone? How could she not? What would become of her, me must be the next question, as she belongs to me. She can't doubt it. I would sell her. I would sell them all. I imagine this. I imagine it sometimes, selling them all and the house and the land, selling his debts, which are considerable. He has loans from his brother and 3 banks, and has used my house as collateral for repairs on the mill. He has what my father called planter's disease. He keeps buying land when he hasn't the means to cultivate it. Now, interesting too is Manon's relationship with her father. Father's been gone for several years. Is that Manon worshipped her father, absolutely worshipped him. She sees him as the man of all men, kind of thing. And it's an interesting kind of dynamic because she compares her husband to her father. In the end, though, her husband and her father, there's no difference between them. One she idolizes because he's dead and was her father. The other one, okay, is her husband. Now, in all this, their marriage is actually childless, right? And the indication is because water exists, okay, is that her husband has no issue, okay, with impregnating his slaves, but not her. But the fact is that she doesn't actually want to have her husband's child. Interesting too, is, to the point where she actually takes laudanum to get herself to sleep, to fall asleep while the act is taking place. Has gone to the doctor and basically begged him to tell her that will be no children from this marriage, right? But when she compares her husband to her father, this bit here, whenever father went to the hiring barn, I'm not saying this word, the African Americans, right, thank you, pressed around him and begged him to take them on. They all knew there would be better housed and fed on his farm than on their master's grand plantations, and that there were 4-day rest once a week. Right. A New Year party was famous among them, and once hired, they shouted and slapped one another on their backs, congratulating themselves on the feast they would enjoy together. Right. It's like, yeah, she tells it, yes, my father was a good man because he was so good to his slaves. Yeah, yes, that. He's such a good man for that. Oh, absolutely. And when it comes to um, Sarah, right, now Sarah, her slave, oh God, I hate saying that word, is this book does not hold back on absolutely god awful it was. Like this bit here absolutely broke my heart. Right. Sarah's baby, a boy, was taken from her. Oh, she had a baby with someone else. Okay, she had a baby with another man who wanted to free her, and this man was actually whipped. In the meantime, right. And a man called Bam. That's was her first relationship, if you will, with Sarah. Had a baby from that, and when Bam wanted to actually marry Sarah, um, this happened to Bam. Sarah's baby, a boy, was taken from her as soon as it was born and sent out to nurse at my brother-in-law's plantation upriver. We understanding that when he was old enough to work, he would be sold, and the profits after his board were deducted. Divided between the brothers. Sarah wept, pleaded, and then grew silent and secretive. My husband was pleased with himself, though he had been forced to sell a valuable African American at a loss. When the dealers saw Bam's scar, they took him for a troublesome fellow and lowered the offer accordingly. By the end of the year, Sarah was pregnant with water. Right. So her husband had Bam beaten, okay, because he got Sarah pregnant. And then as soon as, okay, within a year, Sarah was pregnant, okay, with Walter, who is Manon's husband's child. Yeah. But and all this though is Manon just blames Sarah for this. Absolutely blames Sarah. Right. So, and the thing is, when Manon goes to the doctor about her infertility, okay, this bit here kind of also sums up the mentality of the day, right? Will he not sell the girl? No, he'd only find another. This one suits me. She hates him as much as I do. I was a figure of sympathy across his expression, but I didn't think it was for me. It was in pity for my husband trapped between two furies. Well, he said, God willing you will have a child. You're young and good health. That's what I fear. That's why I consented to see you. I want you to tell my husband I cannot bear children. Don't endanger my life to even to try. Right. You want me to lie? Not to save my life, said desperately. Your life is not in danger. Right. That's the thing. The doctor feels sympathy, okay, because Manon is such shrew, okay? And the fact is, Manon is written in a way which I actually feel no sympathy for her. She's like the mistress of her own making, by the way. She had no dowry. She chose to marry her husband, right? The marriage is absolutely miserable. She's god awful to Sarah. She's got no warmth or love in her heart. So, and the fact is that other people view her as an awful person too. Absolutely. Right. So when Manon goes back to her mother who's dying, whilst there's a cholera epidemic going on, you can also kind of see with her husband, okay, which I just thought, okay, we've got another version, right. Nothing could be a more laughable than a touching scene of our departure. The master bids farewell to his wife and servant, tremulous with the fear that one of them may not return. For which one? He wishes I might die of cholera and fears that she may instead. I wish he might be killed by shooting rebellious African Americans. She wishes us both dead. Right. So, yeah. Now, in this case, there's a slave uprising. And as you can imagine, it goes as you can expect. And the fact is, one thing I love about this is, of course, okay, I'm not meant to sympathise at all, okay, Manon's life or sphere, right, is when Manon's mother dies, and of course the estate, she's an only child, okay, is all left to her. Her brother's Sorry, no, she actually does have a family. Sorry, she actually does have a family. They all passed away, so she is all alone in this world, right? Mother's estate is left entirely to me and is great and unthought. She has set aside a small inheritance I knew nothing about. It has grown impressively, so I'm to have the house to furnish in, sufficient income to live comfortably, and 2 slaves, Peak and a boy named Isaiah, who is mother's hired out to a baker in town. All is mine, and yet is not mine. My husband can get it, and doubtless will dispose of it as soon as I can get it. Right. Is there no way to preserve this? To myself, I pleaded with the lawyers. Not unless you would divorce your husband, and she's absolutely tempted to do it. She's absolutely tempted to do it. And she actually goes back to Louisiana and says to her husband straight to his face, since you came and marriage is over and you won't control me. You will not control me. Right. Absolutely. And in another book, this would have been seen as an empowering moment. That is what I generally liked about this book. In any other book, there would have been an empowering moment of you can't control me. But as Man is such a good awful character, it's not. It's so cleverly done. Right. Because when she says, fine, I'll just leave you and I'll go live in my mother's cottage and I live happy, and I'll take Sarah with me, and because she's mine, incidentally. Right. And if I were to leave Sarah here, what then? I could see it. He'll have Sarah to himself and I will be gone. He mulled over it with the same expression he gives the menus on the rare occasions. So we dine at restaurants together. The prospect of making the wrong choice vexed him sorely. You are my wife, he declared at last. That is my misfortune. Right. So, and she basically says, no, you were not to my mother's house. It's mine. It's my house. It's absolutely my house. And in the end, okay, Manon's decision is decided for her when her husband is killed during a slave uprising. Essentially, what happens is Manon is shot in the shoulder, it skips a bone, it destroys. She can move her hand, but no longer her arm. Her arm is dead, but her hand still moves, okay? And Sarah runs away, and you'd think if Manon had any compassion, she would have just left Sarah alone to escape, get to Canada, get anywhere, find the Northern Star, the Underground Railroad, but she doesn't. She makes it her obsession to get Sarah back. She hires a lot of people to get Sarah back because as she's going to be entrenched in this misery, okay, Sarah left with the baby and left Walter behind. Inside her own head, Mana has always had this feeling, okay, of she's better than her husband. Because remember, her husband was the master. She's the master's wife. Remember that her husband died and she becomes the master of the household, right? She is now the one holding the whip. She's now the one in control. And now, as she's trying to get Sarah back, to basically entrench Sarah in her own misery of her own making, incidentally, right, it's here. How can a light woman and a dark child disappear without a trace? I complained to my aunt. We were seated in the drawing room. On the writing table lay a much crumpled, atrocious written letter, a report of Mr. Leggett on his efforts to secure the runaway Sarah. Right. He'd been up the coast as far as Savannah, my aunt said, quizzing the captains and the stewards of every ship. Has located the brother? Sarah's brother. I'm afraid not. Right. So, that's the thing. That is absolutely the thing. And when she meets Mr. Roger, who actually is a free man who wasn't in love with Sarah, who essentially kind of like comes to her with a kind of like a proposition, like, here we are. She makes it clear how good awful she is. I've no intention of selling Sarah. It's that simple. She's not for sale. However, I would no objections to marry between you. I think that is your object, is it not? I'll continue to live here during the week. So she will continue to live here during the week, but she will come to you on Sundays and would be free to visit 1 or 2 evenings a week when I'm dining out. You aren't serious, he said flatly. Leave me to imagine the extent of his outrage. A free man married to a slave, his children will be mine to do with as I pleased. Right. And she basically makes it clear to Mr. Roger, who was in love with Sarah, who wanted to free her to marry her. But she won't do that. She absolutely won't do that. And in the end, okay, Sarah is tracked down and brought back. Sarah is tracked down and brought back about the baby, and all her daughter was saying that was actually died. And the fact is that Sarah almost managed to escape because she was living as a free white man. She was living, slash in a cabin with people helping her, but living as a man, dressed up as a man, living as a free white man. Something okay that Manon and her family okay would never ever experience. And this bit here, right? When you get to the north, they invite you to the dining room and they ask you to sit at the table. Then they offer you cream and sugar. So a cup of tea and says, "Do you want cream and sugar?" I see this image of Sarah. She was dressed in borrowed clothes, sitting stiffly at a bare wooden table, while a colourless Yankee woman, her hair pulled tight into a tight bun, served her tea in a china cup. The writer's husband fetching her cushion to make her guests more comfortable. It struck me as perfectly ridiculous. What on earth did they think they were doing? The idea of anyone, okay, who's of African heritage being treated like a decent human being is so beyond the pale for Manon. She can't imagine that anyone would think that. Actually inviting anyone of a different colour to sit at the dinner table. But it's quite interesting too because Manon herself is of Creole heritage. So there's kind of this mentality of, as she's of Creole heritage, and there's indication, okay, she's kind of ashamed of that, by the way. There's objections to her parents' marriage because of that. She has to act in a certain way. She's got to be harder. She's a hard-hearted bitch of a person with absolutely no redemptive features. When she finds out, she's reading her father's journals, she actually finds out that her image of a perfect father is shattered because her father and her husband were very, very similar. Her father had this mentality of, I will be kind to my slaves because I want my slaves to adore me. I want my slaves to worship me as a god. And her husband is no different. Okay, he goes to the buying hut and offers them orders so they'll be whooping for joy and literally worshipping him, trapped in his goddamn cycle. And it makes it clear. And Manon is a horrible character. You want to feel sympathy, okay, because of when she's injured and everyone now, she's now a widow, right? And a friend of hers, okay, who could have proposed marriage but needed someone with money and didn't. You want to feel sympathy? I see it as this friend of hers getting off scot-free. Horrible characters doing horrible things, and I love this novella. It's not even long. It is like 209 pages, and it's brilliant because it doesn't hold back on how god awful this world is. When the slaves rebel and fight back, and the husband's killed, I was practically cheering. But the fact is, okay, I've read so many books of people actually escaping slavery. This is what happens, and the fact is, there's an indication, okay, even though this child, the daughter, Sarah's daughter, okay, all Sarah will say is that she died. As ambiguity there, whether she did or she didn't, and is now that Sarah has tasted a moment of freedom, she knows what it's like. There is the kind of implication that she could actually inspire a rebellion of her own, which I do hope that happens. Right, she's tasted a freedom in a way, okay, that Manon would never taste. Right, because she's a good awful character. Anyway, Property by Valerie Martin. Read it, it's fantastic. And I'm signing off here.